Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. We're live in Charlottesville. We're live in the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille network. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. Absolutely enjoy connecting with you guys through the I Love CVille network. We're powered and presented by Ting Fiber Internet. Crazy fast internet, the best in Central Virginia. Powers the network that you guys love. We have a $288 savings only through ilovecville.ting.com. If you want the best internet in the area, it's Ting, and it's not even close. We use it here for the I Love CVille network, and we're offering you $288 in savings at ilovecville.ting.com. A lot to cover on the show. Judah Wickhauer is the fabulous director of this fine program. We'll talk and give you an update on how much gambling has raised in the Commonwealth of Virginia in the first 11 days of being legal. The number will shock you. I have that number for you. We're going to talk Louisa County. County officials, county administrators in Louisa County have committed to broadband internet for everyone in Louisa by 2025. We saw Nelson County make this push, and as a result, Nelson County is more popular, more Tony. People are swarming to Nelson for the American dream of home ownership because its board of supervisors, its county administrators and leadership understood the value proposition of broadband. Now Louisa jumping in the mix, and by 2025, everyone in the county will have broadband, they say. I will assess on this program, at least I will try to assess the value of broadband, not only for Louisa, not only for Charlottesville, but for Central Virginia in totality. Yes, there is one correlation, and we'll explain that correlation today on the show. We'll also talk books, children's books. I'm a dad. My kid's almost 3. One of the books he enjoys, one of the authors he enjoys reading is Dr. Seuss. We've all, in some capacity, I would bet, most of us in some capacity have been touched by Dr. Seuss in a book of his. Well, there are 6 Dr. Seuss books that will never be published again because of racist imagery and racist undertones. We have that story for you on the I Love CVille show. Also, here's an interesting tidbit. Dr. Seuss earns, on a year-to-year basis, the second most amount of money for a dead celebrity. Okay, he's characterized as a dead celebrity. I'm going to let you know who is the number 1 top earner as a dead celebrity in the world. Dr. Seuss is 2. Do you know who is number 1? Forbes magazine has listed Dr. Seuss as the second highest paid dead celebrity in 2020. On this show, we will ask you who is the number 1 highest paid dead celebrity in 2020, according to Forbes magazine. Put your comments in the comment section. What are your thoughts? I'll let you know in a matter of moments on the program. We'll also talk Alabama football. The Crimson Tide have said, and they went on the record, their athletic director of the University of Alabama, its athletic director went on the record and said, we're going to play in front of a full stadium, a full packed house in the fall when Nick Saban's Crimson Tide open up the season in September. Wow. That story for you. Alabama's not messing around. They're like, we want butts in the seats. We want a sold-out stadium. We want people to see Alabama kick and tail. Literally, Alabama said that yesterday. A lot you can see we're going to cover on the program. Johnny Ornalis, Paul Johnson, welcome to the show. Our friends in Nashville, Tennessee are watching. Folks outside Charlotte, and of course, everyone in Central Virginia. I got a fabulous photo from Restoration Restaurant in Crozet that I want to bring to you and to bring to your attention. Restoration Restaurant in Crozet, you should see what they're doing outside to accommodate diners and to try to drive interest and demand to Restoration in Crozet. That story coming up. Tag your friends. Let them know the show has started. Spread the love of the I Love CVille show. We work hard. The only thing we ask in return from you is to like and share the show. Judah Wickhauer, you're the director. Let's go to our first story about gambling. Guys, in fact, before we go to the first story, don't put it on screen yet. Don't put it on screen yet. I want to get this off my chest. Aaron King, hello. Welcome to the broadcast. I love you, EK. Tomorrow on the show, and it's not my news to announce, or I would do it right now. Okay? Tomorrow on the show, we will showcase an individual. I'm not going to say if it's a man. I'm not going to say if it's a woman. I will say this person lives in the city of Charlottesville. I will say this person is a known commodity. I will say this person has a mission to bring positive change to Charlottesville, Virginia. This person, born and raised in the area, bleeds Charlottesville. This person tomorrow at 12:30 will make an announcement that he or she is running for Charlottesville City Council. And that seat across from me, studio camera please, my friend Judah Wickower. This seat right across from me at 12:30, we will make news yet again on this network. With a new individual entering a race that I've said is the most important election in Charlottesville, Virginia history, and it's not even close. After tomorrow, we'll have the person sitting across from me, and I will give a little tease here. This person's going to run as a Democrat, not as an independent, not as a Republican, but as a Democrat. So after tomorrow at 12:32 or 12:33 p.m., after the Daily Progress, NBC 29, CBS 19, CVille Weekly, and all the media outlets watch this show to get the news, we will have the person across from me at 12:33 p.m. in the race for the most important election in Charlottesville history. We will have Yaz Washington, a 23-year-old, Brian Pinkston, the project manager from the University of Virginia, Juan Diego Wayne, 4 individuals running as a Democrat for Charlottesville City Council, and then Mayor Nakia Walker running as an independent. You're going to want to watch tomorrow's program. You're going to want to get involved in this race and follow the candidates, even if you live in Albemarle County, even if you live in Fluvanna or Louisa. All right, so mark it on your calendar. All right, let's talk gambling, please. And you can get it on screen now, Judah Wickower. Gambling in the first 11 days, during the first 11 days of it being legal here, as services started to go online in the Commonwealth of Virginia, gamblers in our fair Commonwealth wagered a staggering $58.89 million with 4 operators. I'm going to give you that statistic again. In the first 11 days that online gambling was allowed in the Commonwealth of Virginia, gamblers in our fair Commonwealth wagered a staggering $58.89 million with 4 operators, nearly $60 million in the first 11 days. Those numbers do not include the Super Bowl, where we all know a hell of a lot of money was put on the line from a Super Bowl standpoint because we're all watching that game. Those numbers do not include the biggest one of them all. It's not the Super Bowl. You know what the biggest gambling event of them all is? March Madness. So let's recap what I just relayed to you. In the first 11 days that gambling was allowed in the Commonwealth of Virginia, nearly $60 million was wagered by Virginians, $58.89 million to be exact. That total does not include the Super Bowl or March Madness, and the Super Bowl and March Madness are the 2 biggest gambling events of the year. The Commonwealth of Virginia has a tax rate of 15% on gambling companies' gross revenue. I've said on this show for a freaking year. I've said on this show since COVID started. I was one of the first to make these statements because when I was saying it, it was taboo to say on a microphone in front of a lot of people. 13 months ago, when this thing was hitting the you-know-what, I said gambling and cannabis would be all the rage. And I got so much HE double hockey sticks for that. So much HE double hockey sticks for that. I said municipalities will be short on money and they will turn to incremental sources for revenue and gambling and cannabis. And folks, in 11 days of being allowed, gambling generates nearly $60 million from Virginians, and the Commonwealth can tax operators at the clip of 15% of gross revenue. You know what the crazy thing about this is? You know what the crazy thing about what's happening is? Gambling, the lotto, and cannabis, that revenue will be used to fund schools and children and how they learn. I got a 500 spot on the Detroit Pistons covering 7 points against the Chicago Bulls. I got 500 on it. Let's go through an online company and let's wager this money because I think the Motown Pistons are going to cover that 7 points. They're playing well lately. Part of my money is going to help little Johnny in 2nd grade learn his ABCs. Judah's a little stressed and has some anxiety because his boss, Jerry, at work can be a jackass. Judah wants to take the edge off. He hits the head shop, buys a J, relaxes, and thank God I don't have to deal with Jerry right now. Susie in 1st grade, she just got a little money for her 1, 2, 3s. Crazy time. That is impact of COVID-19 right there. Another story I want to get to on the program happened on City Council yesterday. I watched the meeting. Did you guys watch the meeting? That was a marathon City Council session, something that concluded well after midnight. Sina McGill was not there on the dais. She had a family emergency. The best wishes to Sina McGill, Councilor Sina McGill. You were missed last night on the dais. So much was covered on the program. We will slowly unpack yesterday's City Council meeting throughout this week on the I Love CVille network. One of the things that you have to notice is the West Main streetscape is clearly losing momentum. School reconfiguration is trumping the West Main streetscape. COVID. The parking garage is clearly lost momentum. COVID. Another thing that came from yesterday's meeting was Gregory Swanson Way. And on yesterday's show, we had Jim Hingley, Commonwealth's attorney, Albemarle County, on the program. And Jim is a fascinating guy. I enjoy chatting with people on this network. Jim's one of those guys where I just sit back and learn from. And he was talking about Gregory Swanson and the impact Gregory Swanson had on this community on the University of Virginia. Judah, you have some sound from Jim Hingley, right? All right, I'll count you down, sir, when to play the Jim Hingley sound on Gregory Swanson. Last night, City Council, remember, Sina McGill was not there. She didn't vote. Heather Hill, yes to Gregory Swanson Way. Lloyd Snook, yes to Gregory Swanson Way. Michael Payne, yes to Gregory Swanson Way. Nakia Walker, no to Gregory Swanson Way. Nakia Walker says Gregory Swanson's not local. He should not have an honorary street name. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion, Mayor Walker. I got no beef with you saying that. It passed last night, though. Gregory Swanson Way, downtown Charlottesville, is going to become a reality. Jim Hingley yesterday characterized the importance of Gregory Swanson a lot better than I ever can. Let's listen to the Commonwealth's attorney of Albemarle County, Judah Wickower, in 3. Judah Wickower in 2, and in 1.
Start out with that?
Sure.
Could Judah put the photo up on the screen?
Absolutely. And he'll give us a thumbs up when it's on screen.
All right. Well, what I'm asking to be shown is the photo of a moment, a very important moment in Charlottesville history, a very important moment in national history. This is the moment when Gregory Swanson's case had just been completed in a Charlottesville courtroom, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But his case had been decided that he, as an African American, could be admitted to the University of Virginia.
Okay. And he's going to put it up. It's actually on screen now, and you will see it in a matter of moments.
All right. And so this was after the court's decision had been handed down. This was a groundbreaking decision, a civil rights victory in September of 1950, a long time ago. And so this photograph was taken by the people who participated in the case after the decision was handed down, granting Gregory Swanson admission to UVA. And the picture was taken on 2nd Street, what is now known as Market Street Park. If you can see from the orientation of that photograph, it's on the small low wall that surrounds that park on the 2nd Street side. And of course, the reason that they took the picture there was the federal courtroom was in the library. And that's the library now, the Jefferson-Madison Regional Library, but back then it was a post office and a courtroom. So that was taken to recognize the importance of what had just happened here in Charlottesville. And the people in that picture, of course, the caption shows, well, the picture now you can see in the center is Gregory Swanson. And to the left, as you're looking at the picture, is Spotswood Robinson, an eminent civil rights attorney. And to the right of Gregory Swanson, as you're looking at the picture, is Oliver Hill, and then next to him is Thurgood Marshall. These are civil rights heroes, national civil rights heroes. They were here in Charlottesville representing Gregory Swanson. And this was part of the NAACP legal effort to dismantle segregation in the United States that began in the 30s and continued on well into the 60s and 70s, culminated by Brown versus Board of Education, the case in 1954. So that's the moment, a historic moment in Charlottesville. So what are we asking council to do tonight? We are asking council to designate 3rd Street, which runs along the library, is connected with the building where this historic decision was made. We're asking council to designate that as Gregory Swanson Way as a way of bringing attention to this very important civil rights victory that happened in Charlottesville. So that's on the agenda for council tonight. Now, that's the moment, and that's the decision, and that's really significant. But I want to just briefly, I know we got a lot of ground to cover today, but briefly I want to go back and tell a little bit more of the story of Gregory Swanson that led up to this decision. Gregory Swanson had already become a lawyer. He had gone to Howard Law School. Right. And he was a lawyer, and he applied to University of Virginia Law School for a graduate degree. And he applied as part of the NAACP strategy to desegregate institutions of higher education and other institutions as well. But he was given the opportunity to present a test case to UVA to see if we could break down the barrier that was against him. And the law school faculty unanimously in 1950, in a segregated institution, the law school faculty unanimously voted to admit Gregory Swanson. And I'm a University of Virginia Law School graduate, and I'm very proud of the action that the law school faculty took back in 1950 to integrate UVA. Now, how did Gregory Swanson get into court if the law school faculty said, come on and be a student here? Well, the Board of Visitors said no. And so Gregory Swanson, with the assistance of the NAACP legal team, sued the Board of Visitors. It culminated in a decision that was made on September 5th, 1950, to require that Gregory Swanson be admitted to UVA over the objection of the Board of Visitors. And it's good for people to know that this decision resulted in the integration of the first university or college in the South. Wow. So this was a first for Virginia, but it was a first for the entire South. And it was a decision that was part of the line of cases that led ultimately up to Brown versus Board of Education. It's enormously significant, and what we're asking council to do tonight is to designate, give a historic street designation in honor of Gregory Swanson, and to bring attention to this very important event that happened in Charlottesville.
This sounds like a slam dunk. This sounds like a slam dunk. I mean, we have an African-American gentleman who is making historical grounds here, breaking the color barrier at the school here in Charlottesville. I mean, this sounds like a slam dunk.
Well, we're very we're very happy that council is considering this, and we're very hopeful that council will see this as you describe it, as a slam dunk.
Jim Hingeley, guys, Albemarle Commonwealth's attorney, joined us yesterday on the show. Here's the beautiful thing I love about this network and this show is yesterday we could be talking with Jim Hingeley, Commonwealth's attorney, Albemarle County, and today we're talking about the action that council took. And by a 3-1 vote, again, Sena McGill not at yesterday's meeting due to a family emergency, by a 3-1 vote with Payne, Hill, and Snook voting in favor, Gregory Swanson Way is now a reality. Mayor Walker dissented. She reiterated in yesterday's council meeting her objection to naming a road in the city of Charlottesville to someone who was not local. From my standpoint, this is the exact story that should be identified with a plaque or some signage around Charlottesville. You have a gentleman, an extremely talented and bright gentleman, who was denied admission to the University of Virginia by some white dudes on a board of directors. And this guy is as talented, if not the most talented guy potentially in this law school. And because of his skin color, he was not allowed or was given resistance to come to the university literally by the board of directors of the school. Okay? This is the exact type of story that we should be championing, the exact type of story that we should be honoring, the exact type of legacy that we should be pedestaling. Because it influences the next generation and says, look, perhaps in more difficult times, Gregory Swanson pursued his dreams, and he didn't stop fighting for his dreams. That's the message we need out, especially as we're struggling with COVID. We don't stop fighting. You know what I say to my kid now? My kid is almost 3. And my kid, I don't know if your kids are like this. I'm sure they are. I'm new at this. We got one. He's not even 3 yet. There are times he gets frustrated, whether he's playing sports with dad or mom is asking him a word to read in a book and he's not sure what it is, or he's confusing orange and red, whatever it may be. Sometimes he gets frustrated, like we all do. And he'll say he's having this great word explosion. Over the last 90 days, Mom and Dad have been so proud because our kid is just exploding with his words. It's like all of a sudden things just started clicking for him. And he can do 4, 5, 6, 7 word sentences. He's contributing to the conversation. But one of the phrases that's gotten into his lexicon, into his vocabulary, into his things that he says to Mom and Dad is he's using the phrase, I can't. I can't do it. I can't do it. And it's so shocking to me that like so early on, my son's 2, he already has these mental blocks about being able to do something. Initially as a dad, I said something and it's so cliche, Millers don't say I can't. Millers find a way to do it. And in that moment I was like, Jesus, I'm turning into my father. But at that moment I also thought, what did I just say to my son that's going to help him grow or mature or be a better version of himself even at 2? Me saying to him, Millers don't say I can't. They just figure out a way to do it. That's not parenting. That's some kind of cliche jargon that my father used to say, and his father used to say to him, and probably my granddad's father, my great-granddad said to my granddad. So I sat back and I'm like, maybe what we need to do is figuring out why Trey is struggling with the action he's trying to do, and instead walk him through the steps of fulfilling or actualizing the activity that he's trying to do in the moment. So let's take shooting a basketball into a hoop in the living room because Daddy loves sports. And we give him a basketball, and gradually we get him to step further back from the hoop and raise the hoop a little bit higher. Well, 2 days ago, the Fisher-Price hoop, you all know the one I'm talking about, the plastic one that has different levels, that comes with a little ball that's about the size of a size 2 or size 3 soccer ball. It's a real small ball, okay? I put the hoop a little too high and a little too far away from him. And his jump shot, if you call it a jump shot, kept coming up short. And he said, I can't do it. I can't make the hoop. And at that moment, I did not do the cliched thing my dad did to me, his father did to him, and my great-grandfather did to my granddad. And I did not say, Millers don't say can't. We figure out a way to do it. Instead, I got at eye level with my son and said, look, this is how maybe you could try to do it. And he emulated what I did. He missed it the first time, missed it the second time, made it the third time. And now that mindset of I can't is now a mindset of I can, because he watched himself do it with dad standing next to him for support. And to relay that or relate that back to Gregory Swanson way, you have a gentleman who did not settle with I can't get into this school. And that's the type of story we should celebrate. And I'm glad we are in downtown Charlottesville. Thank you, Jim Hingley, for bringing that to our attention yesterday. A couple more things I want to get to before Alex Urpí is going to join us in 11 minutes here on this fine program. And you can join us in the show by leaving your comments and questions and thoughts in the Facebook comment section, and I'm going to get to them in a matter of moments. In fact, I'm going to get to them after the Dr. Seuss story. Look at the screen and look at the rundown of topics I'm going to cover today. 6 Dr. Seuss books have been stopped from a publication standpoint. We'll let you know what those 6 are, and I have a question for you. Of every dead celebrity out there, Forbes magazine said Dr. Seuss was the second highest earner of dead celebrities in 2020. Do you know who number 1 is? Alex Urpí. Not Elvis Presley, but a very good guess, my friend Alex Urpí. Who's number 1 dead celebrity that grossed the most money from his or her brand despite being 6 feet under in 2020, according to Forbes magazine? Before we get to that, a couple other items I want to get out of the notebook. Let's get the Louisa County headlight on screen, please, Judah Wickhauer. Louisa County leadership, Louisa County government, Louisa County administrators have said by 2025, all of Louisa County will have broadband internet. This is a big deal. Why is this a big deal? Because certain aspects of Louisa, just like certain aspects of Albemarle, just like certain aspects of a lot of Central Virginia, have no access to consistent, legit, fast internet. Can you imagine being in COVID-19 as a mom, as a dad, as a kid, as someone who works, as someone who has to learn in school and not have access to internet? That's why when I run for office, and I undoubtedly will, it likely will be the Board of Supervisors of Albemarle County. We have to prioritize broadband internet as if it's electricity or running water. If we had families in Central Virginia without running water or electricity, we would be making a huge deal. Not having internet is the same type of situation. Louisa County said by 2025, all homes and businesses in the county will have broadband. This was made possible by a partnership with the county, Rappahannock Energy Cooperative, Dominion Energy, and the Central Virginia Electric Cooperative Firefly Fiber Broadband Program. So here's the question you have to ask yourself. What's the impact Louisa County broadband in 25 for all residents and rooftops? What's the impact of Nelson County broadband? Was it 22, 23, 24, something like that? Right around the corner. Nelson County is going to get this done before Louisa. I think it's 23. I'll ask Jesse Rutherford, Board of Supervisors, of this. This is my prediction. Charlottesville, the city, and Albemarle County are obscenely expensive. We're not building homes at the rate we need to build in either Charlottesville or Albemarle County. The University of Virginia is creating a couple hundred new jobs every year and then attracting people from outside Central Virginia with these new jobs. In the process of attracting folks outside Central Virginia to these new jobs at the university, it's creating more competition and demand for home ownership in a 60-mile radius around Charlottesville. Let's call that Central Virginia, a 60-mile radius around the city. As a result, As Albemarle and the city of Charlottesville become more cost prohibitive for many families to live and enjoy, the next layer of municipalities, Nelson, Fluvanna, Greene, Louisa, Orange, Gordonsville, they will become popular, in vogue, Tony, and the talk of town. We're seeing it now with Waynesboro. The municipalities in that next layer, the ones that can solve the broadband conundrum the fastest, are the ones that are going to reap the return on investment. Nelson County, its real estate market is going gangbusters. Nelson County is going to reap the benefit of real estate tax revenue because it had the vision of rolling out broadband years ago. And folks, people that can't afford to buy a home in Charlottesville and or Albemarle will then look immediately to Orange, Louisa, Greene, Fluvanna, Madison, Waynesboro, the Shenandoah Valley. You get my drift. When they do that punch list of where they're going to buy a house, I can assure you, very high atop that punch list is consistent broadband internet access. Because mom and dad are working from home, or little Johnny or little Susie might have to do hybrid remote educational learning from the coat closet or the spare bedroom. This is a big deal for Louisa. And the reason we know it's a big deal is look what happened to Nelson. And they were the first ones to really say, we're going to prioritize and double down on this. Follow it closely. As broadband goes, real estate values go. I will say that again. Follow it closely. As broadband goes, real estate values go. The next topic on the program is a Hall of Fame for athletes that have played sports in Central Virginia. Not just athletes, but African-American athletes that were overlooked. Their athletic prowess was overlooked because of the color of their skin. Jeff Burton joined us on Real Talk, a show we do at 10:15 a.m. on Tuesdays and Friday mornings. And Jeff Burton is atop a charge, atop a group that is looking to raise money for an effort we absolutely believe in. Can you imagine the value of an African-American Hall of Fame or Walk of Fame? A Walk of Fame or Hall of Fame that prioritizes these honors by showcasing the attention in African-American neighborhoods like Rose Hill or in schools like Burley that was the school that catered in the 50s and 60s to African-American students all over Central Virginia. Jeff Burton explains this way better than I am. As a result, we're going to play sound from the show this morning with Jeff talking about what his team and his group is doing for this community. Folks, if this doesn't give you goosebumps, I don't know what will. Judah, let's cue up Jeff Burton's sound in 3 and 2 and 1.
Sure. So here's what I'm going to say. So what we have realized is that the history of black athletes in Charlottesville, Virginia is rich, and we do not do enough to celebrate that. For those of you who don't know this, Burley was a segregated high school for not only Charlottesville, but Albemarle County, Greene County, Nelson County, surrounding areas in the 1950s, 60s, and early 70s. The Jefferson School was around at that point in time. But ultimately, the schools were integrated in the early 70s. What we want to do is we want to highlight some of these black athletes. Burley was their field. It was the mecca of high school sports on Friday nights in the 50s and 60s. Even the folks from the white community at Lane High School would come over to watch the legendary football team at Burley. So what we're desiring here is to build some kind of memorial to these athletes at Burley. As we restore their baseball field and the facility that surrounds it, what we want to do is to build a walk of fame that starts at the Burley property, cuts through the fence into Washington Park, and ultimately ends at the UVA's property right there at Preston and 14th Street. We've met with University of Virginia officials, we've hosted city councilors, we've hosted Albemarle County supervisors. Everybody seems to be in support of this project. So we've got some UVA folks involved that are helping us design this. I can tell you a little bit more about that if you'd like me to do that.
No, keep going. Oh my
Okay.
gosh, so I can get behind this project
Okay,
here.
so I met about a month ago through University of Virginia, new executive director of the UVA Equity Center named Ben Allen. Ben is a wonderful man, PhD in education, doing some fantastic things in the community, way beyond in level of importance of what's going on at Burley. He has contacted two University of Virginia professors, Elgin Cheekley and Barbara Brown Wilson. They have a history of going into projects like this and designing things that have historical significance. But to add to that, what they often do is find the residents that are most affected by these projects, and they'll invite those residents into the planning and design process. So right now, Burley Middle School principals are identifying 15 to 20 Burley Middle School students. So these are 13 to 15-year-olds that are going to be in brainstorming sessions with University of Virginia architecture professors to design a Walk of Fame. This Walk of Fame will have placards that tell the story of segregation in the Rose Hill neighborhood, tell the story of Burley High School, tell the story of people like Roosevelt Brown, who played in this town and went on to a Hall of Fame career in the NFL. So we believe that not only will Central Virginia residents, but people will come from far and wide to walk the Walk of Fame that starts in Burley and connects into Booker T. Washington Park. So as people wonder how can they get involved, that planning process is going to take some money. That approval process is going to take some connections. Ultimately, we're going to have to fund it and build it, and we're going to need to build it on the backs of individual corporate and foundation folks in this town.
Starts at Burley, goes through the Rose Hill neighborhood, and heads to Booker T. Washington Park. That's something I can get behind, man. That is something that I can get behind. You guys know why I love statistics and numbers, and you guys know why I love sports. Statistics and athletic performance. Jeff Burton said something in that interview, in that sound that we just played. And he said that the Burley football field and the Burley baseball field, segregated school, white folks from all over the area went to the Burley baseball field and the Burley football field to watch athletes play. Why? Because they were damn good. They were damn good. Sports and statistics, sports and numbers. If you could perform, if you can shoot, if you can hit, if you can run, if you can tackle, we will come watch. This network can get behind a Walk of Fame from Burley through the Rose Hill neighborhood and culminating at Booker T. Washington Park. So much so that I feel compelled and inspired in the second quarter of this year to do some kind of fundraiser or telethon on the I Love CVille network where we raise money similar to what we did with the Land Trust, where we raise money for this effort. Because having a Walk of Fame that goes from a segregated school through an African-American neighborhood and finishes at a park named after an African-American leader is pretty damn cool in my book. And also in my book, I'm a man of action, and I want to see it go from the talk to the walk. And if all we need to do is get some money to go from talk to walk, we'll use our network and influence to help get it. More on that to come. Now, one more story before we get to Alex Urpí. Dr. Seuss had 6 books, including And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, that's 1. If I Ran the Zoo, 2. McElgott's Pool, 3. On Beyond Zebra, 4. Scrambled Egg Supper, 5. And The Cat's Quizzer, 6. Those are the 6 books that no longer will be published. They will not be published due to racist images, racist imagery, and racial undertones. I'm fine with that. This has been in the works for a while. In researching and reading this story, this is a statistic that I found interesting. In the year 2020, Dr. Seuss earned the second most amount of money as a dead celebrity in one calendar year. Again, I'll give you the stat again. 2020, the calendar year 2020, Dr. Seuss earned the second most amount of money of a dead celebrity, of any dead celebrities out there. Who do you think was number one? Stephanie, friend of the program, says Kate Spade. Good guess, Stephanie. Not Kate Spade, but very good guess. Alex, who's coming on the show, says Elvis Presley, king of pop. Good guess. Not the king of pop. Olivia Branch says Kobe Bean Bryant. I love Kobe Bryant. Anytime my son and I take jumpers in the living room, when we shoot the jumper, and it's in particularly cute when my son says it, when he shoots the jumper, he says Kobe. Or if he wants to play basketball, he says, Dad, want to play Kobe? It's not Kobe Bryant, though. Vanessa Parkhill and Paul Johnson, you have both got it correct. It is Michael Jackson, the king of pop. Michael Jackson, the king of pop. He earned, I have it right here. I found this statistic very impressive. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, is the number one earner of any dead celebrity. Dr. Seuss is 2. Dr. Seuss earned $33 million in 2020. $33 million for the Dr. Seuss book series. Think about that. Alex Urpí in a matter of moments. This is a fair statement, Herb. Herb Porter, one-time neighborhood association president of CVille, friend of the program. Tremendous respect for Herb. He said, sports in America is and has been the great racial equalizer that is celebrated as misguided evidence of racial equality. I think that's fair. Herb. So you would think that when you step on a basketball court, if you can shoot a basketball, if you can play defense, if you can attack the rack off a dribble, if you can make your free throws, if you can D up, if you can box out, you would think if you're on a basketball court, no matter what you look like, the people in the stands or the folks watching at TV would be like, this dude can play, this lady can play, I don't care what she looks like. Jackie Robinson would say otherwise. Hank Aaron would say otherwise. Willie Mays may say otherwise. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar may say otherwise. Muhammad Ali may say otherwise, just to name a few. To Herb's point, Herb is making the point that once you're on the gridiron, the baseball diamond, the soccer pitch, it's just about performance and nothing else. I guess you can say that to the European soccer players that get called the N-word in front of 100,000 people playing a soccer game, because that still happens. So to Herb's point, he's saying we have a long ways to go. And that's a point well taken, Mr. Porter. Very well said. Thank you for keeping me on my toes, sir. And thank you for the kind words about the story with Trey. All right, let's do this. Let's welcome Alex Urpí to the show. Alex Urpí is the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. He and his father, Xavier, have a phenomenal program called Today y Mañana, which airs Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network. Judah, we have him on the line, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. My friend, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jerry. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. What's tickled your fancy so far, Alex Urpí?
Oh, I've enjoyed the show so far. I love the Wall of Fame I was watching, and the Dr. Seuss. I had no idea who was the number one. In fact, so to be fair, my brother Nicholas told me to say Michael Jackson, and I ignored him and said Elvis. So that does show you who's who are some of the brains behind Emergent. You see my face, but Nick has the pitch that there.
Emergent Financial Services, very much a family business. Alex, his brothers, his father Xavier, they offer prudent, honest, fair financial advice to their clients. All right, so much I want to cover with you. We're going to obviously highlight today, mañana, tomorrow. I want to talk about the market yesterday. It was absolutely on fire.
It was.
What did you think happened yesterday? What did you think with the market performing well? We don't have to talk specifics if you don't want to. One of the things Powell said in the middle of last week, Powell was saying, look, we're going to have to keep interest rates very low for here to come. The market responded by popping when Powell made that comment. How much do you think that pop had to do with what he had to say? And I guess, where do you see it going from here? And then I have some specifics for you.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, absolutely. I think it has an impact. And we've seen this really, I would say, I mean, my father would certainly say since at least 2008, where one of the largest impacts on the markets at this point is the Federal Reserve and the central banks of the world. I mean, if you think ours is active, consider that the European Central Bank buys stocks. The Japanese central bank, I think, owns huge quantities of funds that are in the Japanese markets. So what you're seeing here, and granted, our Federal Reserve does not buy stocks at this point, but one of the major changes that happened in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, for the first time ever, the Federal Reserve bought ETFs, which are like mutual funds of bonds. And so that was an enormous change. And so what we're seeing, I think, is the Federal Reserve has made it very clear they do not want the stock market to go down, and that all they really have to say to do that is to make some kind of promise. In other words, interest rates will stay low. The free money that we create from putting zeros, digitizing in the banking system will continue. There may even be a point where, in Japan, they have literally pinned certain rates. They have said the 10-year rate will not go beyond this number, and we have committed to printing as many yens as necessary to ensure that happens. And the market always responds the same way because that's where the money flows at this point in time. And so I think people just have to be aware that doesn't mean a full-blown market correction. I mean, corrections happen, crashes happen. It happened last year, went down 35%, the market, and then came back. But just to be aware that the Federal Reserve is an active player at this point. They may not be buying stocks, but the way they talk, the things that they talk about,
they're backstopping the economy. How they talk is backstopping the economy and creating consumer confidence. So in a lot of ways, they're stimulating consumer confidence. I know Powell did this past week. The question I have for you is, and we're about to have another round of stimulus potentially coming down the pipe here. When do we start worrying about inflation? When do we start worrying about all this money coming into this economy, into this ecosystem, locally, statewide, nationally, globally? And when do we start worrying we're hurting us?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think we saw a little bit of that worry peeking through with rates on the long end. Because you have to remember long-term interest rates, when you're talking 10-year treasuries, 30-year treasuries, that's inflation expectations. Those rates are determined by what do people think will happen with inflation. The short term is more controlled by the Federal Reserve. They can impact that a lot. But I think part of the challenge we have with this is you could have gone back. I mean, I remember all the predictions in 2009, 2010, 2011, hyperinflation is coming. We're going to become the Weimar Republic. We're going to become Zimbabwe. And the inflation never appeared in the typical numbers you look at. And I think an argument can be made that inflation did appear. It was in the stock market. Because PE ratios, which is, so for those who don't know, PE ratio, that's price over earnings. So it's sort of a measure of how expensive the stock market is. I mean, that has increased dramatically over the past decade.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you could make an argument that and we know for a fact that many companies took 0% interest rates from the Federal Reserve, right, and then bought back stock.
Yeah.
Pushing up the price of their own stock. I mean, we know buybacks have been extremely common in the last decade. So I think that certainly plays a role into it. The challenge I think that the average person faces is all the statistics, all the history that we have, which says that inflation should follow what we're seeing, the massive amount of debt being printed, hasn't yet come to fruition. It should have happened. I mean, the Japanese really should have seen hyperinflation years ago, and it never materialized. I mean, the amount of yen that they poured into the market was enormous. They promised to print unlimited yen, essentially, and it hasn't materialized. So I think there's the challenge of saying this hasn't been happening and doesn't seem likely to happen, with I need to be prepared in case it does. I need to be willing to think about your future in terms of what happens if inflation goes to 5. Because the Federal Reserve has said that they want the average, they're looking at an average inflation of 2%. Well, that means it can go higher than 2. I mean, if you're looking for a 2% average and we're at almost 0 right now.
Yeah, you better get used to some 4s and 4.5s.
Exactly. So I think it's definitely time people consider that. Not saying it will happen, because it's entirely possible that it does not. I mean, it has not happened for the past 10 years. But I think when planning, I think it's prudent for people when they're looking at their financial plan in the future to say, don't just run with the 1% we're seeing now, or the 2% we're seeing now. You need to at least run yourself a scenario and say, what happens to my lifestyle? What happens to my plans if we hit 4 or 5? Just to be sure you're still okay. And I think it's always prudent to sort of think through that, because it could very well happen.
Alex Urpí, CEO of Emergent Financial Services, on the hotline here. Throw this to you, Alex. How do you see the rest of this year playing out? We have, across the country, credit card debt down for Americans because they've been stuck inside and not going to restaurants and happy hour and concerts, etc. We got savings up for a lot of Americans. They got more money than ever. They got lower debt than ever because they haven't been going out. And we're talking another round of money coming from the government into people's bank accounts here, potentially very soon here. Do you see Q2, Q3, and Q4 as just gangbusters? And maybe localize it, if you could, for Central Virginia here, kind of like a macro theme that's localized a little bit for the rest of the year for Central Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so locally, I definitely think there's still some potential. I mean, there's no denying we've still been through December, January, February in a semi-lockdown state. Not locked down completely, but there's been limitations on restaurants, on where you can go, things you can do, people you can meet, how many can meet. I mean, I think they just lifted outdoor gathering from a 10-person limit to a 25-person limit. So I think that alone has the potential to really improve local situations. The challenge, I think, nationally is that I mean, as a financial advisor, I love that people are saving more. I think it's fantastic. I think long-term, economically, it's very good. The challenge I think we will face in this year is the entire United States economy for the last, for 2 decades at least, has been more and more geared to consumption. I mean, 70% of GDP is consumption. A lot of what runs the engine of this economy is don't save it, spend it. And so if people aren't spending it, if we've developed new habits, I think there's the potential that things will look as gangbusters initially as we might expect.
Interesting. So you think social behavior, obviously we know social behavior has changed. I mean, dude, the other day, I think I mentioned this to you. I tried to open up the door to the Macklin building. There's a beautiful lady coming in the building. I opened the door for her and to just be a gentleman. And she freaked out because I was so close to her while opening the door. I mean, it just shows you that COVID is potentially changing chivalry, which is changing human behavior. So you think human behavior in this 12-month period could have been changed so much that Americans don't spend at the clip that they once did?
I mean, I certainly think it's possible. We saw it actually in 2008-09. I mean, there was a massive stimulus early in 09. And they did it a little differently. You got that via earned income tax credit rather than a direct check to your bank account. But the impact of successive stimuli was not as powerful as the numbers in terms of theory would have predicted. And part of the reason for that was because we were in a recession, people took the stimulus in 09 and said, I need to save this in my pocket because if things don't get better, if I don't get my job back, I'm going to need this money. So I can't go out and spend this money. And so that had an impact in terms of things not being quite as effective as we would have guessed, as the economic theory would have suggested in 08-09. And I think that's a possibility. And I'm not saying necessarily that it's a bad thing in terms of long term. because I agree with you completely. I mean, you cannot run huge debt as a people, not even just government-wise, but as a people forever, and expect things to not eventually come to a head, to really dampen your. I mean, there's a lot of long-term theories that say the large amounts of debt dampen your growth. You can't grow when you have huge quantities of debt hanging over you, in a sense. And so reducing that, I'm not sure is necessarily a bad thing. I just do question whether in the short term we may be looking at GDP and say, well, maybe we're not going to go gangbusters. We've come back a huge way from, a minus 30 in the second quarter last year to, I think for the year we're looking maybe at a minus 6 or so when all the numbers are in coming back.
What was it in February 2020?
February 20, the decline?
What was it before? Where were we at before COVID?
Before COVID, I think so. The previous year, we've been approaching 3. But we have not hit 3% GDP growth in a decade. The closest we got, I think, 2017, we got to 2.9% GDP growth, right? And last year, obviously, was a decline in growth. My suspicion is I don't think we're going to. We may not necessarily see us come all the way back to where we were pre-COVID in a matter of months, And so we'd be still looking at numbers that in any other scenario would be recession. But of course, given where we were at COVID, they look good because of the strength of that recovery. But I think it's sort of incumbent on us to realize, all right, we may not get all the way back as quickly as we'd like, just because of changes in behavior. I mean, even you look at Charlottesville, I think there's the potential that I can see just from their numbers, people's numbers nationally on returning church attendance, on returning other places, that people may be reticent to come back to certain activities, even if they're legally opened. It's very hard to pull back, I think, a fear factor. And let's face it, COVID was scary. I mean, 500,000 Americans deceased is scary. It doesn't matter that you may reach a point where a lot of people are vaccinated, things are legally open, the government says you can do these things. There's going to be, I think, the segment of the population that says, I still don't feel comfortable. And that slows your recovery there and puts into question when you're thinking of saving, all right, or investing in the markets. Okay, at what point does the markets recovery not quite line up with the actual economic recovery, and do I need to worry about how they converge? Because if the economy is not going to reach the markets, do the markets have to come down to reach the economy? And weigh that against, I think, the efforts by the Federal Reserve and others to say, no, we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen. Whatever it takes to keep it afloat, we will do, and that'll push the markets back up. So it's just a matter of weighing on balance and getting in. I would say the key to all of this is always getting in frequently. There's a beautiful thing in saving called dollar cost averaging, where if you put $100 every month, some days you're going to buy high, some days you're buying low, some days you're buying in the middle, but over time, you're making sure that you're never trying to time the market. You're never trying to pick the bottom or pick the top. You just want to be there all the time. You want to be consistent. And I think that's what people are going to have to look at, I think, this year. Because last year, let's face it, there were a lot of winners last year.
Oh my gosh, I know, dude. Dude, last year, and I say this on the show, last year I was like 79% return. Judah, I think, was even higher. The Q1 has been some tough sledding.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it reaches the point that by January 1st of this year, I'm like, well, either everything I'm picking is a genius or this is what a bull market looks like.
Right. I know, Alex Urpí. That's what we were literally just talking in here. We're like, how the hell are we constantly always right? We know we're not. The only thing we gave each other props for was the fact that we committed to investing and like you're saying, doing it every month. So that's what we were giving each other props for, that we played the game. We understood last year was an absolute anomaly, an anomaly. Say the word for me, Judy. Thank you very much.
Anomaly.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. I got a tongue tie here. This year's been tough sledding. I love this dude, Alex Urpí of Emergent Financial Services. How about tomorrow with Today y Mañana? What do you and Xavier have planned? Or Thursday, excuse me, Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
It's going to be, Thursday is exciting. So at Xavier and I, we're going to do some talks on, in terms of finance themes, how to think sometimes. I think sometimes in different areas of life, we have themes that we want to follow, things we become interested in, ideas that we want to follow, and how do we put that into investing? How do we balance okay, I want my portfolio to be, secure in certain areas, but I have this theme that I'm really interested in. How do we look at that? We're going to have some more PPP information. It's going to be really important. We've got a 14-day window here where exclusively sole proprietors can apply for a Paycheck Protection Program. You've got a lot of the businesses that had trouble in the first time that were getting crowded out by the larger ones. There's a 14-day window where a lot of the larger companies cannot apply for PPP. So my dad and I are going to go over some of that information, really get it out there so that by March 15th, anyone who in this community that should be applying that maybe didn't get it the first time, that they can get the information they need and know where to go. The great sources that are out there, SBDC, Small Business Development Center, CIC, Community Investment Collaborative, go to them, New Hill Development Corp. There's a lot of groups that have information to help with that. And then, of course, our big guest that we're really excited about is Claudia Cruz. So she's with Dulce de Leche. And it's funny, it's beautiful how these chains work, because it was Johnny Ornelas who showed me an interview with Xochitl Diaz, and she does.
She's great.
I knew Xochitl when she was at the radio station. Yeah. And so she was doing an interview with Claudia, who knows his wife, that I also know in Philadelphia. And so it's just amazing to see this. And she has this beautiful little business called Dulce de Leche that she bakes Peruvian goods. And I got to tell you, I ordered the cookies. I had the little alfajores, which is like 2 little sandwich cookies with dulce de leche inside. And as a Cuban, dulce de leche kind of flows in my veins along with blood.
Well, and on top of that, Alex, let's be honest, you have a sweet tooth.
I do have a sweet tooth. I 100%, I cannot deny it. Anything sweet, I enjoy. I get it from my father. In Cuba, they have these merengues, which is basically sugar that you just eat. And my dad used to suck on sugar cane as a 7-year-old. So it's inside us. I think we inherited it. But she has these beautiful cookies, so good. She makes all these beautiful, delicious baked desserts. So we're going to talk to her a little bit about what's her story, because she's a young Latina entrepreneur. And so we're going to find out how she got into this business, how she pivoted last year. I mean, she started this last year. So another story of in the middle of COVID, entrepreneurship from scratch in the Latino community, which is going to be beautiful. We're going to see what she's up to now, the things that she bakes in the area, what it's like to sort of run. She's almost exclusively online. There's no storefront. She's working this through Facebook, through Instagram. So to see how she does that, because that's going to be, I think, really fascinating for people to learn, okay, how can I use social media to start from scratch and grow a fantastic baking business? So we're really excited about having her on and doing this interview with her.
Alex, you are A-plus people, man. This was the best one you have done yet. You've represented your family extremely well. He is Alex Urpí, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Alex and Xavier Urpí host a phenomenal show Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille network called Today y Mañana. They are shining a bright, positive spotlight on the Latino community here in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. I cannot wait for the show. I hope you're bringing in some of these treats with you. If you can we could persuade your guests. We will get them up on the I Love CVille Instagram. If we do, we can get Judah to take some photos so we can give her some exposure. Okay, we do?
She's going to bring some treats for us.
Okay, okay.
Well, if my dad doesn't eat them all, we'll share them with you and Judah.
Dude, I love when Xavier comes. 2 weeks ago, he brings me a fine bottle of liquor, and now on Thursday, Xavier is bringing some fantastic treats for us on the show. I love your family, dude.
What do you say? Liquor and sugar. It's the Cuban way.
It's the Cuban way. My friend, I can't wait to see you on Thursday. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the knowledge.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having us on.
Tell everybody I said hello.
Will do. Same here. Say hi to Judah for me. Give him a wave.
We will. Thank you, Alex. Alex Urpí, guys. Watch Today y Mañana on Thursdays at 10:15. It's fantastic. It's just fantastic. I especially enjoy the dynamic between Alex and Xavier because Alex told us after one of the shows how the dynamic between he and his father, it's just like the dynamic in the conversation at Emergent Financial Services on a Monday when the brothers and Xavier get around the conference room table and they start talking shop and trading ideas and planning the week. I just love seeing these two together on this network. Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. Couple of items I want to get out of the notebook before we get to your comments, and put the comments in the feed, please. We will relay your comments on air in about 8 minutes on this program. Actually, 5 minutes, because I got a 1:45 conference call with the developer here. All right, last few things to get out of the notebook. Virginia got a good win against the Miami Hurricanes yesterday. UVA has one regular season game left. Louisville. The question we're all asking is, can this Virginia basketball team reach the Final Four or make a push for an NCAA tournament title? We're all asking this question. Great to see the win on senior night. You still see this team as flawed. And here's the flaw of this team. Two flaws I see. Flaw number one, when this jump shooting basketball team goes cold from the perimeter, UVA basketball does not have a player that can put the ball on the deck and get to the rack and finish on the rim, get fouled, go to the free throw line, or finish in the paint around the rim. Kihei Clark has the quickness and ball handling to do that. He does not have the height to finish on the rim, around the rim. So when the jump shots don't go down, and it happened early in the second half against Miami, this team is going to struggle to score. Trey Murphy III has the skill set and the ability to beat people off the dribble, and he has the 6'9" height and the 7-foot reach to finish at the rack, along with great hops. Trey Murphy III, I would love to see him start blossoming into a DeAndre Hunter type player for Tony Bennett. There's a lot of similarities between Trey and DeAndre. Similar stature, similar height, similar position, great outside shooters, oftentimes the most God-gifted player on the floor, great length, can attack the rack, can beat people on the dribble. Here are the differences between DeAndre and Trey Murphy III. I hate to say this, but DeAndre gave you effort on both sides of the floor for 40 minutes. He went balls to the wall. I want to see Trey Murphy III find an alpha dog quality inside his soul, inside his being. This guy can be the alpha dog on the team. He's got to realize the God-given ability he has, and he has talent that probably no one else on that roster has. The second flaw that this team has, they do not play defense like other Tony Bennett's teams have played defense. They're not going to get down in the trenches and dig and fight and just win it based on grit and resolve and character. That could change, but this is not as defensively as talented as a team as we've seen in the past for Tony Bennett. Those two fair criticism points. You don't have a guy who can beat defenses off the dribble and get to the rack when the jump shots are cold, and the defense is not playing defense like it normally does under Tony Bennett. Those 2 points are both very fair and applicable, and frankly, I think Coach Bennett would agree with me. Ty Jerome and Kyle Guy and DeAndre Hunter could get to the rack when the jump shots weren't working. Who does that on this year's team? Do I think UVA has the talent to make the Final Four? Yes. Do I think we make the Final Four? Only time will tell. It's going to come up to matchups in the NCAA tournament. Now, one more item out of the notebook, and then we'll get to your comments. Alabama is going to play football this fall in front of a packed house, full football stadium. I found that surprising that they're making that statement in March. The first 2 days of March, and Alabama's athletic department is already telling the world, we will have a sold-out football stadium in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where the Crimson Tide and Nick Saban open up the season in September. Wow. We'll get to your comments in a matter of moments. Remember, you can save $288 through Ting Fiber Internet. use this link, iloveseville.ting.com, iloveseville.ting.com, if you want the best internet at the best price possible. Ms. Soto said, Claudia is a powerful Latino woman spreading the sweet flavors of Peru in CVille. Ms. Soto, I can't wait to try the sweet flavors of Peru in CVille. I'm going to give you a heart for that. Judah, sweet flavors of Peru on Thursday at the I Love CVille Network. You excited for that, J-Dubs? This man's got a sweet tooth over there. Candace is watching. You don't have a sweet tooth? I have a sweet tooth. Online buying isn't popular for certain products as in-person instant buying. All that residual spending adds up at the register. Same with food, houses, events, and gatherings. Just think, a party doesn't only affect the event center, but also the residual. Food and drinks, decorations, party planning, gatherings, photography, gift giving, etc. She's exactly right. The supply chain of in-person activity is so much more significant than the supply chain of this digital Zoom world that we're living in. Just think of work meetings via Zoom. Yes, you may spend some meeting on Revlon and on makeup to look good from chest up. Fellas, you might have a nice Brooks Brothers on, but you don't care what's going on below your waist. You're not doing work clothes. You're not wearing your jacket and tie, your suits, your nice shoes. You're wearing your pajamas. And think about this. If you're not wearing work clothes, do you have less laundry you're doing? And if you have less laundry you're doing, are you buying less detergent? Are you taking less trips to buy that detergent? Is your gas tank getting less gas in the tank because you don't need as much detergent? Is your car having less wear and tear on it because you're not driving to the grocery store for that detergent because you're meeting via Zoom instead of in person? So because of a Zoom meeting, you're not wearing business suits. You're concerned about waist up and not waist down. You're doing less washing machining and less drying. You're buying less detergent. You're getting in your car less to buy that detergent. You're having less wear and tear on the vehicles. The mechanic shops have less vehicles that they need to service because people are driving less. And ladies and gentlemen, this makes Candace's point to a T. We as a society and we as a species, and I'm talking humans, we are supposed to connect in person. It's good for our mental health. It's good for communication. How much stuff is lost in Zoom, text, email, or phone that could be gained by communicating face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball? Thank you, Candace. Love when you watch the show. Sincerely mean that. All right, I'm 1 minute late for my conference call. All right, J-Dubs, that's a wrap. Alex Urpí was fantastic. Judah Wickhauer's A+. My name is Jerry Miller. This is the I Love CVille show on the I Love CVille Network. Thank you kindly for joining us on a Tuesday. You guys have a good afternoon.